This podcast is supported by MIDI Health. Are you in midlife, feeling dismissed, unheard, or just plain tired of the old healthcare system? You're not alone. For too long, women's serious midlife health issues have been trivialized, ignored, and met with a just deal with it attitude. Many of us have been made to feel ashamed or forgotten. In fact, even today, 75% of women seeking care for menopause and perimenopause issues are left entirely untreated. But here's the powerful truth. It's time for a change. It's time for MIDI. MIDI is not just a healthcare provider. It's a women's telehealth clinic, founded and supported by world-class leaders in women's health. What sets MIDI apart? We are the only women's telehealth brand covered by major insurance companies, making high-quality expert care accessible and affordable. Our clinicians provide one-on-one, face-to-face consultations where they truly listen to your unique needs. We offer a full range of holistic, data-driven solutions, from hormonal therapies and weight loss protocols to lifestyle coaching and preventative health guidance. This isn't one-size-fits-all care. This is care uniquely tailored for you. At MIDI, you will join our patients who feel seen, heard, and prioritized. You will find that our mission is clear: to help all women thrive in midlife, giving them access to the health care they deserve. Because we believe midlife isn't the middle at all. It is the beginning of your second act. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
Welcome to the Superman Radio Podcast here on Radio Metropolis. We will get to our next installment here, part 12 of The Mystery of the Lost Planet, in which Zaram is about to expose Kent as actually being Superman, having never left the cell. However, before he does that, the planet Utopia suffers a strong earthquake, signaling the pending doom of the planet. So this will be exciting to hear. But, and before, or as you're listening to this, because I did hear the episode, by the way, so I just want to put that out there. And many times I do before I do my commentary, so I kind of have an idea how to at least tease it or set it up for you. But I do hear it right before I do my commentary for the first time. So I can't tell you, though, but I can't say for sure, but I strongly believe the voice in this particular episode of The Astrologer, so make sure you listen for The Astrologer, is actually Bud Collyer doing Clark Kent with a British accent. As we know that Bud used to do many minor voices on the series since he was there, and it would be silly to hire an actor for 3 or 4 lines. When you hear the episode, you tell me, but I'm quite sure it's him. And as I was listening to that, it got me thinking about what some of these radio actors actually got paid. Now, I want to tell you, don't think of radio actors of the 30s and 40s like you think of television stars today. No, there was no real glory or fame outside of your cocktail parties, unless you were a signature voice, unless you were an Orson Welles or a Jack Webb. Orson Welles had his Mercury Theater, Jack Webb had Dragnet. They were producers as well as writers and directors. They were the whole ball of wax. So they were infamous, or not infamous, but they were famous for doing what they were doing. But still, the radio actors were basically workhorses who would go from studio to studio during the day to do their part and then move on. There was one, if you listen to my Shadow Radio podcast, there was Orson Welles, and then another gentleman came on after Orson Welles for a number of years, and that was Bill Johnstone, who took over the part of Lamont Cranston and The Shadow. And for many years, while he was doing The Shadow, he still went from studio to do whatever part, big or small, that the script called for, because it was a paid gig, just like The Shadow was. Now, as far as Bud Collyer, I think he was more of, I don't want to say he was of the Orson Welles stature or even the Jack Webb stature, even though he was a little before Jack Webb. But he was significant himself because he was the guy. You're doing Superman for a number of years. He's the guy. Without him, it doesn't work at all, because he is both Superman and Clark Kent, and he does a lot of other voices. So in my research, I know that early in his career, we're talking the mid-1930s. That's quite a ways before this. So it's before this, as we're talking 10, 12 years prior to where we are right now listening to the Superman show. He was earning about $7,000 a year. That's pretty good money. And you're thinking, well, what's the equivalent of that? Well, the only way I can equate it is to purchasing power. You can't do value as much as you can do purchasing power, because it depends on, you can buy different things in 1935 that you can't buy today, or perhaps you can buy better things today that you couldn't buy then, or things that didn't exist then do exist now. So it's a whole relevance thing here. But the purchasing power would be equal in 2026 to $165,600. That's what the calculator gives you when I'm recording this. By the peak of the Superman radio show in the mid-40s, his income obviously would have increased significantly. I don't know what that number is, but he was a top-tier radio talent. Now keep in mind that purchasing power means that this number would be equivalent to buying the same items today, as I said, and that also doesn't consider things yet to be invented. We're talking television, cell phones. Even private phone lines weren't available then, not really. As a side note, Collier received no credit as playing Superman or Clark Kent, so to keep the mystery of Superman being that maybe he was real for those kids listening. Do you know how much value that has for the franchise? For Bud Collier to do that? Significant. And because of that, it is believed he was paid slightly higher than standard scale, much higher, I would imagine, to compensate for this lack of public billing. Now let's take a look at his co-stars, his co-actors. Joan Alexander, who was Lois Lane. Jackson Beck, who was the narrator and did other roles on there as well, too. They were known as professional voice specialists. The standard scale for supporting actors, they earned the AFRA minimum. That's the American Federation of Radio Artists. $15 to $21 per 15-minute episode. Maybe a fee or two for rehearsal. And because of that, they did multiple roles, just like I told you about Bud Collier. Jackson Beck played Beanie, and I know he played a few others as well, too. Julian Noah played Perry White. He was also the Yellow Mask, and several others. And since they were paid per episode rather than per character, this made them highly valuable to producers trying to keep costs low. And when you do that, and when you become highly valuable in a job, what happens? You get more gigs, because they want people that appreciate trying to keep costs low. So to further explore the money radio actors were making this time using the radio show, Superman radio show as an example, the AFRA scale, the union scale. Again, a lead actor such as Superman, which aired 5 days a week, that would equate to roughly $75 to $125 per week for that single show. Equivalent to about $1,300 to $2,200 today. When I say a single show, I'm talking about the Superman show, not an episode. So that's what they get per week. Not bad. Not bad. But I mean, again, you're living in New York, you're a star on a hit show. Now, do you want to hear something even more surprising? Some would say disgusting when you compare it and what we know. And to put the radio salaries in perspective, when the Adventures of Superman moved to television in 1952, George Reeves, our buddy, beloved, honest George Reeves, was initially paid $200 per episode. So for the first 24 episodes, well, let's say 26 because of the Moleman, was cut into 2 episodes. That's $5,200 for 1951, taking this from the very first season when it was actually filmed. That's when he was paid. He wasn't paid in 52. It aired in 52, but he was paid in 51. The 2026 purchasing power for that salary, $65,000. And you're thinking, okay, well, let me tell you something. That's what assistants get paid today. So although it was good for an actor to get any gig, that's not retirement money. That's not even lunch money for a lot of people. Remember, this is purchasing power. If you live in or near big cities such as LA or New York, you really couldn't live today in a decent area by yourself on that kind of money. There's no way. In 1951, you probably could because rent and housing were relatively cheaper when talking purchasing power. I'm not saying that it was, that because you were paid cheaper and because housing was not the same rate meaning that was cheaper. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the purchasing power of that. Is that the value of what it would take to rent a certain apartment in a certain nice neighborhood is much easier to do in the 1950s than it was or is in 2026. Because now in 2026, you have more people, more crime, crowded, you have gates, you have taxes that are higher, you have rates that go higher, you've got all sorts of things that bring it up, and they make, if you want to have a lifestyle of worth, it's expensive. So, going back to George Reeves, let's take a look at his final season in 1958. After 6 seasons of playing Superman, his pay had increased what they would say is significantly to approximately $2,500 per episode. And you go, okay, well, that's great. And that was what, this was sort of negotiated when he quit Superman after season 2 and came back for season 3. That he had to be paid a lot more. Now, I don't know if he was paid $2,500 per episode by season 3. That was what he was getting by season 6. So there may have been an escalating scale there. But George was, kind of given the bait and switch here a little bit, which really irked him tremendously. Now, when they were negotiating this with him, they told George, we're going to pay you a lot more. And you know what? We're going to guarantee you another 52 episodes, all in color. And George is thinking, wow, that sounds pretty good. And you're going to pay me this? I think I'll do that. That sounds like a good deal. What George didn't know is that they did a little bait and switch on him. In that, those episodes, because George was thinking 26 episodes per season for like 2 years. No. They ended up doing 13 episodes over 4 years. That's a big difference. A very big difference. Because it cuts his ability to do really anything else for those 2 extra years, except for Superman. Plus he's 2 years older doing Superman, which you could really tell by the final season that he was really past his prime in doing the show. Even though they were negotiating for another season that would go in 1960, I don't think, unless he went under some tremendous physical regimen to ready himself for the role, I don't think it would have worked. I think he was far too old at that point. But since the seasons were cut down to 13 episodes, that gave George a 2026 purchasing power of $364,570. Okay, well, sounds good. Not bad money. But not great for a star of a very successful television series by the time you get to season 6. Let's take a look at the Friends cast. They were getting $1 million an episode each in 1998. That was a long time ago, 28 years ago from the time I'm recording this episode. That would be $328,000 per episode in 1958 if George Reeves was getting the same equivalent purchasing power. And ultimately for the season, it would have paid George, for those 13 episodes, $4.3 million by the final season. And to finish this off, John Hamilton, Jack Larson, and Noel Neill, Perry, Jimmy, and Lois, they've talked about in interviews for years, certainly Jack and Noel, struggled to get raises. And they started at roughly $200 an episode. And they only saw modest increases over the years. The worst part of it, though, is that they had to be available on this 30-day clause in their contract, which meant it was difficult to do other steady work or even a film. You had to be ready at a 30-day notice. And residual payments for actors were not standard yet in union contracts, which means the cast stopped receiving checks in the mid-1960s. That's only, 8-9 years And how much of those residual checks could they have been when you were only getting $200, $250 an episode? Now, George Reeves made a little extra money appearing in Kellogg's commercials for the show and really made a significant portion of his income through personal appearances. And a lot of those he took Noel Neal with him as well, too. So I thought you'd like to have a little bit of clarity on some of our actors at this time, both in radio, which is, most important for what this show is that we're talking about, the radio show here, and also related to what George Reeves was getting for playing Superman. Not great. But let's get back to our story. As the planet Utopia suffers a strong earthquake just as Zaram was about to expose Kent as being the same as Superman having never left the cell. This is The Mystery of the Lost Planet, Part 12, from April 24th, 1947, here on the Superman Radio Podcast on Radio Metropolis.
Faster than a speeding bullet. More powerful than a locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Kellogg's Pep. P-E-P, Pep. Kellogg's Pep, the Sunshine Cereal, presents The Adventures of Superman.
Today, in this exciting narrative of Superman's most unusual adventure, Clark Kent tells how he almost perished in his effort to save Jimmy Olsen on the planet Utopia. As you know, Clark Kent has been assigned to write a feature story on Superman's most unusual adventure. Let's join him now as he continues to recall his experiences on the planet Utopia.
Unable to free myself from the terrific force of gravity on Utopia, I tried to stall Jimmy's execution by assuming the guise and garb of Clark Kent. And it seemed to work. But Zaram, wily regent of Utopia, tricked me by placing Jimmy in my cell and eavesdropping on our conversation. Apparently, Zaram heard enough to make him suspect that Kent and Superman were one and the same, and to prove his theory, had me brought out into the palace courtyard. There, he was about to hurl a powerful explosive at me, when suddenly a deep rumbling sound rose and swelled as the ground trembled underfoot. Alarmed, Zaram's captain of the guards called out,
You hear that, sire?
Gigantic cracking! What means this?
I fear, sire.
Yes, speak!
I fear our planet is beginning to shatter and fall into eternal space.
It cannot be. My astrologer, my scientists, they said it would not happen until 5 days hence. Well, here it is, like it or not.
What shall we do, sire? What shall we do?
Wait. The rumbling is diminishing. The ground shakes less.
Oh, but will grow worse again shortly, sire.
Then I must see my astrologer at once. I go to my council room. Fetch me my astrologer.
But what of this earthling Kent, sire?
Leave him here. Hurry! My astrologer! Well, speak up, Master Astrologer. What say you? Why does this rumbling and cracking come now, 5 days before your forecast?
Well, sire, it would appear I made a slight error in my calculations.
You hear that, Captain Teller? A slight error, he says.
I regret that, sire. But after all, I am but an astrologer. I can read the mysterious forces of nature, but I cannot control them.
Nor can you accurately read them, stupid dolt. Much wealth I gave you for your knowledge and advice. You agreed it was safe to begin my invasion of the Earth on the day after tomorrow. Now we are lost.
Now we cannot even save ourselves. We, sire, you and I must perish too.
No, Zaram. There is one way you can yet save yourselves and your warriors, and proceed with your invasion of the Earth as planned.
Tell me quickly.
Listen carefully, sire. As you see, it is now but a few lapsed revolutions beyond 9 o'clock. At exactly 11 o'clock occurs the moment in solar time in which your space shells can travel to the planet Earth.
What good is that? We shall be dead long before. Why, at any moment Utopia will break apart.
Who says that, Captain Taylor?
2 of our men of science. They told me how 100 years ago, when the last disaster occurred, it struck within 1/2 hour after the first great rumbling and cracking.
Yeah, that is true. But this time I know definitely that disaster will not strike until between the hours of midnight and 1 o'clock of tomorrow morning.
Are certain of that?
I am quite certain, sire. I assure you that disaster will not strike until a good hour after you and your warriors depart for the Earth.
It is not true. It cannot be true.
I swear I speak truth.
You seek to deceive us.
Wait. Perhaps he does speak the truth.
But the scientists say...
They could be wrong and my master astrologer right.
I am right, sire.
There may still be time for me to proceed with my plans, to launch my warriors and my secret weapons in the waiting space shells.
I assure you there is yet time, sire.
Good. Captain Teller, give the order for my warriors to assemble at the space shells.
One moment. I have remembered something, sire.
What is that? Quickly, time flies.
Superman. If he has escaped to his home on Earth, he may foil our invasion.
I do not think he has escaped.
How can you know? Did he not disappear from the cell where we found the Earthling Clark Kent?
I say I do not think he has escaped. I would I had time to make sure by proceeding with my experiment on the Earthling Kent. However, we must take the chance. No time can now be lost. Give the order for my warriors, Captain.
At once, sire. But what of the two Earthlings, Kent and James Olsen? And of the traitorous Anthar and Poco?
I have a fine plan for them. A fine plan. Come, I shall disclose it to you on the way, and you shall have the pleasure of carrying it out.
Mr. Kent!
Easy, Jim.
Prisoners Anthar, Poco, James Olsen. Fall out beside the Earthling Clark Kent.
Gee whiz, Mr. Kent. What's going to happen to us now?
Don't worry. Everything will be all right. I hope.
Oh, friend Clark Kent, this can't be true. Just this morning I saw you.
In Metropolis, I know. But look, Poco, please trust me and don't ask any questions.
Oh, when I needed aid, you did your part. Now I'll do mine with all my heart.
Good. Oh, if I can just break loose.
Gee whiz, Mr. Kent. With you held down like this and Superman not here, I'm afraid it's all up with us. But good.
No, it's not all up yet, Jim. Not yet.
Silence, prisoners. Now hear me. By the orders of Regent Zaram, you will remain in this courtyard, from where you may witness the departure of our warriors to the Earth.
Huh? What's that?
I was afraid of that. Oh, if I could only get loose.
The departure of our space shells will take place at 11 o'clock. And the bright moonlight will afford you an excellent view of our takeoff.
Mr. Kent, you hear that? He says they're going to invade the Earth tonight.
Yes, I heard him.
Listen further, prisoners. Shortly after our departure, this planet is doomed to be shattered into eternal space. And you will be shattered with it.
What? Oh, no, it won't. Anthar said we had 5 days yet. Hey, Anthar! Anthar, what are you shaking your head for? Why don't you say something?
Now, Anthar grieves in silent pain. He has no heart to speak again.
Mr. Kent, why don't you say something? Usually when we're in a bad spot, you think of something.
I can only think I've got to get loose in time to stop Zaram.
Well, how could you stop him, even if you could get loose?
I know a way.
You do? Well, what is it? Tell it to us. Maybe we can...
No, only I can... Wait! I'm gaining. I'm gaining a little against this heavy gravity, but it's slow work.
Oh, dear.
Oh!
If only Superman could know how ill our winds of fortune blow.
Not even Superman can help us now, Poco. The force of gravity would hold him down, too. Just like it does Mr. Kent.
No, this time I tell you, James, my friend, this is the dark and bitter end.
As the rumblings and grinding noises that signified Utopia's doom increased in intensity, I continued to strain and struggle against the force that held me rooted, helpless, almost willing to admit that this was indeed the end for Jimmy and for Superman.
In a moment, we'll return for a startling climax in today's episode of Clark Kent's story. So keep listening. Now back to Clark Kent's exciting story of Superman's most unusual adventure.
Buildings toppled and mountains crumbled as the planet Utopia continued to disintegrate. And still the terrific force of gravity held me in its vice-like grip, while time grew shorter and shorter. Suddenly, The sound of a gong was heard from a point nearby, cutting clearly through the noise of destruction.
Poco, what do those gongs mean?
No, the time grows short. The hours have gone by. Within a few minutes, we shall die.
A few minutes?
Yes. Oh, endless sorrow. Oh, boundless woe. Our lives have but a few minutes to go.
Jeepers, Mr. Kent, what'll we do? What'll we do?
Oh, I'm afraid it's no use, Jim.
Oh, no.
I can't budge.
Mr. Kent, look. A big crack's opening in the ground near us. Mr. Kent! Mr. Kent! Poco, what happened to Mr. Kent?
Oh, one moment he was here. But then there was no trace. Well, I fear he's vanished in space.
Oh, no! Mr. Kent! Mr. Kent!
This is the end. Farewell, my friend.
Poco, I'm falling!
Faster and faster, with great grinding, shattering rumbles, the huge gash in Utopia's surface widened further and still further. Then as I hurtled into space, the bulk of the planet tore completely away, bearing Jimmy Olsen, Poco, and the now unconscious Anthar with it.
Don't fail to hear Clark Kent's thrilling climax of Superman's most unusual adventure and the beginning of a new and exciting story. Tune in again tomorrow, same time, same station.
And remember, for breakfast, it's Kellogg's Pep.
For excitement, the adventures of Superman.
Superman is a copyrighted feature appearing in Superman DC comic magazines and is brought to you Monday through Friday at this same time by Kellogg's Pep, the Sunshine Cereal. And be sure to be with us tomorrow for the thrilling adventures of Superman. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
And that was The Mystery of the Lost Planet, Part 12 from April 24th, 1947, here on the Superman Radio Podcast on Radio Retropolis. This ending was very exciting as well as a little convoluted to me, as I found it difficult to picture in my mind what exactly was happening at the end of the episode. Kent, who was still stuck because of gravity, suddenly, because of the ground breaking apart, broke free, and he drifted into space. I don't know why he drifted into space, but he just did. Bye-bye, Clark. While Jimmy and Poco were on this chunk of the planet, falling away. Chunk of the planet? Not sure what that means. Did the planet finally succumb to its earthquakes as the ground opened up, swallowing everybody in its path? Perhaps. But just how does Jimmy and Poco survive this? Knowing, of course, that they did. We will find out as we are now getting to our concluding episode next time. That will be episode 13. But for now, that was part 12 of The Mystery of the Lost Planet from April 24th, 1947, here on the Superman Radio Podcast on Radio Retropolis.
This is Radio Retropolis.